The stars bent around Commander's ship like water around a stone. Space itself moved aside as his fleet traveled faster than light without any engines. They did not need machines for such simple things. Their minds were enough. Stood on his command bridge, his tall blue form glowing with inner power. His 3 eyes focused on the star system ahead. 8 planets circled a yellow sun. One of them was blue and green, covered in water and life, perfect for harvesting. "Commander," spoke Subcommander Ra, her voice entering his mind without sound. "The world shows signs of space travel. They have built stations around several planets." Lips curved upward. This happened sometimes. A species would develop basic technology before they found them. It made things more interesting. "What level of development?" he asked with his thoughts. "Crude rocket ships, metal stations, no psychic abilities detected. They cannot even speak mind to mind." "Primitives, then?" Waved a hand, and the main display showed the blue world. Thousands of metal objects orbited it. Ships moved between planets using fire and chemical fuel like ancient savages. "How many worlds do they control?" 3 in this system. The blue one holds most of their population. The red world has small colonies. The moon of the giant gas planet has research stations. Nodded, the pattern was always the same. A species would spread to nearby worlds, think they were mighty, then meet the... After that, they would learn their true place in the universe. For 3,000 years, the Empire had grown across the galaxy. 50 different species now served them. Each one had thought they were special until they met true power. They were gods among mortals. They lived for thousands of years. They could move objects with thought alone. They could travel between stars in the blink of an eye. Most importantly, they could reach into minds and control them. "Prepare the display of power," commanded. "Let us introduce ourselves properly." The fleet of 30 ships materialized above the blue world. Each ship was a work of art, shaped like a crystal flower made of silver and light. They did not orbit the planet. Instead, they hung motionless in space, defying the world's gravity through will alone. Reached out with his mind and touched every electronic device on the planet below. Computers, televisions, radios, phones, all of them suddenly carried his voice. "Primitive beings of this world," his words echoed in every language at once. "I am commander of the Empire. We are your new gods. Kneel before us and accept our divine rule or face destruction." He expected panic, fear, the usual chaos that came when mortals first met their gods. Instead, something strange happened. The humans responded with questions. "This is Admiral Torres of the United Earth Defense Force," came a reply on all frequencies. "We welcome contact with your species. Could you provide more information about your intentions and capabilities? We would like to establish formal diplomatic relations." Blinked his 3 eyes in confusion. Diplomatic relations? These creatures spoke as if they were equals, as if they had a choice in the matter. "I think they do not understand," Ra said into his mind. "Perhaps they have never met superior beings before." "Then we will educate them," replied. He focused his power on one of the human space stations. The metal structure began to glow and bend. Slowly, he twisted it into a new shape, the symbol of the Empire. The humans inside were safely moved to escape pods first, was not cruel without reason. "Behold our power," he broadcast. "We command matter itself. Your technology is nothing compared to our abilities. Submit now and we will rule you with kindness." Again, the humans surprised him. "Fascinating," came the response. "Could you explain how you manipulate matter at the quantum level? Our scientists would be very interested to study your methods. We're detecting unusual energy patterns that don't match any known physics." Felt his confidence waver. These beings were not acting like any species he had encountered before. Where was the fear, the worship, the immediate surrender? "Sub-Commander," he said quietly, "scan their minds. What are they thinking?" Ra concentrated for a moment. "Strange, Commander, I sense curiosity more than fear. They seem excited. Many are trying to understand how our ships work. Others are moving military vessels into position, but they do not flee." "Military vessels?" laughed. "What could their crude ships do against us?" He examined the human fleet through his ship's sensors. Metal hulls powered by nuclear reactors. Weapons that fired solid projectiles or focused energy beams. Primitive beyond measure. "Commander, they are requesting permission to send a diplomatic team to meet with us," Ra reported. "A diplomatic team?" Considered this. Usually, species surrendered immediately or fought hopeless battles. These humans seem to want to talk. It might be amusing to meet them face to face before accepting their surrender. Very well, tell them they may send representatives to our flagship, but make it clear that we are gods and they are mortals. This meeting will determine their fate. As he waited for the human delegation studied the world below, the humans had built a complex civilization. Their cities sparkled with lights. Their technology, while primitive, showed signs of rapid advancement. Some of their space stations were clearly new, suggesting they were still growing and learning. This could be interesting. Most species the conquered were either too primitive to be useful or too advanced to need guidance. These humans seemed to be right in the middle, advanced enough to be valuable slaves, but primitive enough to control easily. He would enjoy breaking their spirit and molding them into proper servants of the Empire. First, though, he would let them meet a god face to face. That always convinced the stubborn ones. Smiled and began preparing for the arrival of the human delegation. Soon, these strange beings would learn their place in the universe. They would kneel before the like all the others. He had no idea that the humans were preparing for something entirely different. Dr. Sarah checked her recording equipment one final time. As Earth's lead, she had dreamed of this moment her entire life. First contact with an alien species. She just wished it was happening under better circumstances. Remember, everyone, she told her team aboard the orbital station New Geneva, stay calm, observe everything, and record all data. These beings claim to be gods, but they're still biological entities. They can be studied and understood. Admiral Torres watched from his ship, the heavy cruiser Indomitable, positioned at the edge of the solar system. His weathered face showed no emotion, but inside, he felt the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. All ships are in position, Admiral, reported Captain from the bridge of the destroyer Defiant. The experimental weapons are charged and ready. Good, remember we're not looking for a fight, Torres replied through the comm system. But we're not backing down either. These aliens want to see what humans are made of. Let's show them. Doctor felt the air shimmer around her as three figures appeared on the station's main deck. The had arrived without using any transport ships. They simply stepped out of thin air like magic. Commander stood 7 feet tall, his blue skin glowing with soft light. His 3 eyes looked down at the humans with obvious superiority. 2 others flanked him, their faces showing the same arrogant confidence. I am Commander, he announced, his voice somehow speaking perfect English despite his alien features. You stand before gods, kneel. Doctor stepped forward, her scientific instruments scanning the aliens continuously. Welcome to New Geneva Station. I'm Dr. Sarah representing the United Earth Government. We're honored to meet you. She did not kneel. His 3 eyes narrowed. You do not show proper respect to your gods. With respect, Commander, Doctor replied politely. We'd need evidence of divinity before we could accept such claims. Your technology is clearly advanced, but technology isn't magic. The alien leader raised his hand. Doctor's clipboard floated out of her grasp and hung in the air. With a gesture, he bent it into a perfect circle. Is this not magic? He asked. Doctor's instruments buzzed with readings. Fascinating. You're manipulating gravitational fields at the molecular level. The energy patterns suggest some form of directed quantum field manipulation. How do you generate the initial field variance? Blinked in confusion. The human was treating his divine power like a science experiment. This is not science, he said firmly. This is the power of gods. Everything follows scientific laws, Doctor explained. Even abilities we don't understand yet. Could you demonstrate more of your capabilities? Our physicists would love to study the readings. Behind the aliens, hidden cameras recorded everything. In secret laboratories across Earth, scientists analyzed the data in real time. They were already working on theories about how the abilities functioned. Decided to show more power. He reached out with his mind and lifted all the furniture in the room. Tables, chairs, and equipment floated in perfect formation around the ceiling. Impressive, Doctor noted, checking her instruments. The field extends about 10 meters from your position. Is that your natural range, or could you extend it further? You ask too many questions, snapped. Gods do not explain themselves to mortals. Doctor's assistant, Dr. James Park, stepped forward. Could you demonstrate your ability to read minds? We've heard claims that some species develop telepathic abilities. Sub-Commander Ross spoke up. I will show you. She focused on Dr. Park's mind and began reading his surface thoughts. You are thinking about your daughter. She is 7 years old. You hope to return home safely to see her again. Dr. Park nodded. Correct. Now can you read deeper thoughts, memories from years ago? Ra tried to probe deeper but found strange resistance. Human minds were chaotic, full of random noise and conflicting thoughts. Unlike other species, who had orderly, predictable mental patterns, humans seemed to think about dozens of things at once. Your minds are disorganized, she said with difficulty. That's probably our neural inhibitors, Doctor explained cheerfully. We developed them after our first contact with psychic species, basic electromagnetic fields that create mental static. They don't stop surface thought reading, but they prevent deep mental control. Felt a chill. First contact, you have met other psychic species. Oh yes, Doctor nodded. The traders taught us a lot about psychic abilities. We've also encountered the explorers and the research ships. They all had mental powers to some degree. That's why we developed countermeasures. This was impossible. They controlled this entire sector of space. How could these humans have met other psychic species? You lie, declared. We would have known of any alien contact in our territory. Doctor pulled up a holographic display showing star charts. Well, space is pretty big. They came from the Vega sector, the from beyond, and they were just passing through on a long-range exploration mission. None of them mentioned your empire. Studied the star chart. Those were border regions, areas they rarely patrolled. It was possible that other species had made contact with these humans without the empire knowing. What did these species want? He asked carefully. Trade mostly, Dr. Park answered. They wanted our music and art. They were interested in our mathematical theories. They just needed supplies for their long journey, very peaceful encounters. And you learned to defend against psychic abilities from these meetings. Doctor nodded. Among other things, we've always been good at learning from others. It's one of humanity's strengths. Felt his confidence shaking. These humans were not the isolated primitives he had expected. They had already met other advanced species and learned from them. Worse, they had specifically learned to defend against this main advantages. Enough talk, he declared. You will submit to the Empire or face destruction. We offer you one final chance to surrender. Doctor looked genuinely sorry. I'm afraid we can't accept that offer, Commander. Humanity values its freedom too much to accept any form of slavery, even if the masters call themselves gods. Then you choose death. We choose to defend ourselves, Doctor corrected. And Commander, you might want to check your position. Reached out with his mind to contact his fleet. What he found shocked him. Human ships had surrounded his vessels while he was distracted by the meeting. Dozens of them appearing from behind moons and asteroids where they had been hiding. When? He demanded. About 10 minutes ago, Doctor replied calmly. Admiral Torres is very good at tactics. He used to teach military strategy before joining the defense force. Transported himself and his team back to their flagship immediately. The humans had tricked him. They had kept him talking while positioning their forces. It was clever but ultimately pointless. Prepare to destroy their pathetic fleet, he ordered. Show them the price of defying gods. But as his ships charged their psychic weapons, something unexpected happened. The human vessels didn't retreat. Instead, they moved closer, their hulls gleaming with strange armor and unknown weapons. Realized too late that the humans had been preparing for this fight for a very long time. The first attack came like lightning from a clear sky. Its flagship focused its psychic cannon on the human destroyer closest to Earth. The beam of pure mental energy could crack a planet's crust or drive an entire crew insane in seconds. The destroyer exploded. One down, Ra reported with satisfaction. The primitives cannot stand against divine power. But Admiral Torres had expected losses. He had studied every piece of data from humanity's previous encounters with psychic species. He knew they would target the obvious threats first. Phoenix Squadron, execute Plan Delta, he ordered from the Indomitable's bridge. 6 human frigates burst from behind Earth's moon, moving at maximum speed toward the fleet. Their hulls were wrapped in a strange metal mesh that sparkled with electromagnetic fields. They fired again. This time their psychic beam hit the lead frigate and bounced off. The energy weapon deflected away harmlessly into space. "Impossible," snarled. "What is that armor?" "Faraday cage technology," came Doctor's voice over the communication channel. "We learned it from studying neural shields. Electromagnetic fields can disrupt psychic energy if you tune them to the right frequency." Captain commanded the lead frigate, the Defiant. Her ship shuddered under the deflected attack, but held together. The experimental armor was working, but barely. "All ships target their weapon arrays," she ordered. "Fire." The human ships unleashed a storm of metal projectiles moving at incredible speed. They had shields that could stop energy weapons, but solid matter was different. The slugs punched through their barriers and tore into alien hulls. 3 ships took damage before they could react. "How are they hitting us?" Subcommander Ra demanded. "Our shields should stop everything." "They're using kinetic weapons," realized. "Solid projectiles instead of energy beams, crude but effective." He had to admit these humans were cleverer than expected. Most species relied on energy weapons because they were easier to aim and had unlimited ammunition. Only a few races still used physical projectiles, and usually only as backup weapons. "Destroy them all," he commanded. "Use full power." The fleet spread out and began a coordinated assault. 30 ships focused their psychic weapons on the human forces. Several more human vessels exploded, their Faraday armor overwhelmed by concentrated fire. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 more appeared from hiding spots throughout the solar system. They had been waiting behind asteroids, powered down and invisible to most sensors. Now they revealed themselves and joined the battle. "Where are they all coming from?" Ra asked in shock. Admiral Torres smiled grimly from his command chair. "Humanity has been preparing for this day for 50 years, he said on an open channel. "Ever since we met our first psychic species and learned we weren't alone in the universe." The truth was that Earth had been building warships in secret for decades. Not exploration vessels or trade ships, but pure weapons of war designed to fight enemies with abilities humans didn't possess. Every encounter with alien species had taught them something new about potential threats. Captain pressed her attack, leading a squadron of destroyers against the left flank. Her ships moved in perfect coordination, their AI systems sharing targeting data faster than any organic crew could manage. "Neural inhibitors at full power," she reported to her crew. "Their mind tricks can't touch us as long as we stay buttoned up." They tried to use their telepathy to confuse human crews, but found their thoughts bouncing off electronic barriers. The humans had learned to protect their minds as well as their ships. Grew desperate. These mortals were fighting like they actually had a chance of winning. Worse, they were using tactics he had never seen before. Their ships worked together like parts of a single organism, sharing information and covering each other's weaknesses. "Subcommander, target their home world," he ordered. "If we destroy their planet, the survivors will surrender." "Yes, Commander." Ra began charging the flagship's main weapon. It would take several minutes to build up enough power to crack a planet, but once ready, nothing could stop it. Admiral Torres saw the energy build up on his sensors. He had been waiting for this moment. "All ships fall back to defensive positions around Earth," he commanded. "Phoenix, you're clear for Operation Prometheus." Hidden in the shadow of Jupiter, something massive began to move. It had been waiting there for hours, using the gas giant's electromagnetic field to mask its presence. Now it emerged into open space. The UES Prometheus was humanity's and most advanced warship. Built in secret over the past 10 years, it incorporated everything humans had learned about fighting psychic species. Its hull was made of metamaterials that didn't just deflect psychic energy. They absorbed it and converted it into power for the ship's own weapons. Captain Torres, Admiral Torres' daughter, commanded the massive vessel. At only 32 years old, she was the youngest captain in Earth's fleet, but she had trained her entire life for this moment. "All stations report ready," her tactical officer announced. "Good," Captain Torres replied. "Let's show these so-called gods what real power looks like." The Prometheus accelerated toward the fleet, its experimental engines pushing it faster than any ship its size should be able to move. As it approached, sensors detected something impossible. "That ship," he said slowly. "It has psychic energy signatures, but they're not from any crew. The ship itself is psychic." The truth was even stranger. The Prometheus had been built around artifacts recovered from a dozen different alien encounters. Its core contained crystallized psychic energy from the neural mesh technology and quantum field generators based on designs. But it was all controlled by human engineering and human determination. "Target the large vessel," ordered. "All ships concentrate fire." 20 ships turned their weapons on the Prometheus. The psychic beams struck the hull and disappeared. The ship's metamaterial armor absorbed every ounce of energy and fed it into internal power systems. "Thank you for the recharge," Captain Torres said over the comm. "Now let me return the favor." The Prometheus opened fire with weapons they had never seen before. Quantum disruptor beams that tore apart the very structure of matter, torpedoes that created miniature black holes, and strangest of all, psychic feedback cannons that turned the aliens' own mental energy against them. 3 ships exploded in the first salvo. 2 more were crippled and began drifting helplessly. "Impossible," screamed. "No mortal race can build such weapons." "We had good teachers," Admiral Torres replied from the Indomitable. "Every species we've met has shared knowledge with us. Unlike your empire, we believe in cooperation instead of domination." The battle turned. Human ships pressed their attack from all sides while the Prometheus carved through the center of the formation. The aliens found themselves fighting not just Earth's military, but the combined knowledge of half a dozen species that had chosen to help humanity rather than conquer it. Realized his fleet was losing. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Empire faced an enemy that could match their power. "Call for reinforcements," he ordered desperately. "Send word to the home fleet. These humans must be destroyed before they spread their poison to other worlds." But as he sent his distress call, couldn't shake the feeling that he had made a terrible mistake. These humans weren't like other species. They learned too quickly, adapted too well, and fought with a fury born from protecting something precious. They had always won because they fought slaves defending their masters. Now they faced free beings defending their freedom. And freedom, as they were about to learn, was the most powerful force in the universe. The main fleet arrived like a storm of silver and light. 200 ships materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system, each one larger and more powerful than anything in its advance force. At their head was the Eternal Glory, a massive dreadnought that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Supreme Commander as stood on the bridge of his flagship, his ancient eyes burning with cold fury. For 3, he had led the Empire's expansion. Never before had mortals dared to destroy an entire fleet. "Show me these humans," he commanded. The tactical display revealed the solar system's current state. The debris of 30 ships floated among the planets. Human vessels moved in defensive formations around Earth, their strange armor glinting in the sunlight. And at the center of it all, the massive shape of the Prometheus held position like a guardian. "Primitives did this?" as asked in disbelief. "The reports are accurate, Supreme Commander," replied his aide. "They possess technology that can absorb our psychic attacks and turn them back against us." As studied the readings more carefully, the human ship called Prometheus showed energy signatures that should not exist. It was as if someone had taken the power of the gods and bound it into metal and circuits. "No matter," he decided. "We will show them true divine wrath, prepare the Mind Storm." The Mind Storm was the Empire's ultimate weapon. It required the combined psychic power of 100 ships, but could destroy all intelligent life across multiple star systems. It had been used only 3 times in history, each time to make an example of species that refused to surrender. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Torres felt the massive energy buildup through her ship's sensors. The readings were off the charts, unlike anything humanity had encountered before. "Dad, they're charging some kind of super weapon," she reported to Admiral Torres on the Indomitable. "Power levels are increasing exponentially." "How long until they can fire?" the Admiral asked. 15 minutes, maybe less." Admiral Torres made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "All human ships, fall back to minimum safe distance. Prometheus, you're authorized to use the quantum resonance array." Captain Torres felt a chill. The quantum resonance array was theoretical technology built based on mathematical models that might not work in practice. If it failed, Earth would be defenseless. "Understood, sir. All hands prepare for QRA activation." Dr. Sarah, still aboard the New Geneva station, watched the preparations with scientific fascination mixed with terror. The quantum resonance array was based on her own research into psychic energy patterns. In theory, it could amplify and redirect psychic attacks back through quantum entanglement fields. In practice, no one knew if it would work or simply destroy the ship trying to use it. "Prometheus reports ready," came Captain Tor's voice over the comm. "Supreme Commander, the Mind Storm is charged," reported the weapons operator aboard the Eternal Glory. As looked at the small blue world that had dared defy the gods. Soon it would be nothing but a lifeless rock, a monument to the price of rebellion. "Fire," he commanded. The combined psychic power of 200 ships focused into a single beam of pure mental energy. It was enough force to shatter the minds of every living thing on a dozen planets. The beam lanced across space toward Earth at the speed of thought. The Prometheus moved to intercept it. "QRA activation in 3, 2, 1, Captain Torres announced. The quantum resonance array came online just as the Mind Storm struck the ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then reality itself seemed to bend around the Prometheus. The Mind Storm didn't destroy the ship. Instead, it was caught, amplified, and reflected back along the same quantum pathways that had created it. The psychic energy that should have destroyed Earth instead traveled back through the fleet's own neural networks. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. Every in the fleet screamed at the same moment as their own weapon turned against them. The psychic feedback tore through their ship's control systems, severed their mental connections to each other, and left them as vulnerable as any other biological species. On the Eternal Glory, Supreme Commander as collapsed to his knees, his 3 eyes wide with shock. For the first time in his 3,000-year life, he could not sense the minds of his crew. The psychic network that connected all was simply gone. "What have they done to us?" he whispered. Across the fleet, crews staggered and fell as they lost abilities they had possessed since birth. Without their psychic powers, their ship's control systems stopped working. Many vessels began to drift helplessly as their crews struggled to operate manual backup controls they had never needed before. Captain Torres watched her instruments in amazement. The QRA worked. Their psychic network is completely disrupted. "For how long?" Admiral Torres asked. "Unknown, could be hours, could be permanent. We've never tested it on this scale before." Without their psychic abilities, the fleet was no longer invincible. Their ships were still advanced, but they could no longer teleport, read minds, or manipulate matter with thought alone. They were just another alien species with good technology. "All ships press the attack," Admiral Torres ordered. "But target weapons and engines only. We're not murderers." The human fleet moved forward to engage the crippled vessels. It wasn't really a battle anymore. It was more like a rescue operation. Many alien ships had lost life support when their psychic control systems failed. One of the few commanders still conscious tried desperately to contact his fleet. But without his telepathic abilities, he had to use primitive radio communications like the humans did. "All ships retreat," he broadcast. "Fall back to safe distance." But most of his ships couldn't move. Their crews were too shocked by the sudden loss of their abilities to function effectively. They had never learned to operate their technology without psychic enhancement. Doctor watched from New Geneva as human medical ships moved to assist disabled vessels. "They're actually helping them," she observed with wonder. Admiral Tor's voice came over the comm. "We're not conquerors, we're defenders. There's a difference." On the Eternal Glory, Supreme Commander as struggled to his feet. His head felt strange and empty without the constant whisper of other minds. He had to focus on each individual thought instead of experiencing the shared consciousness of his people. "Status report," he demanded, speaking aloud for the first time in decades. 70% of our ships are disabled," his aide replied, also speaking instead of thinking. "The crews are confused. Many have never operated without psychic assistance." As looked at the tactical display, human ships surrounded his fleet, but they weren't firing. Instead, they were offering medical assistance and technical help. "They could destroy us," he realized. "Why don't they?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Doctor's voice appeared on his communication system, speaking in perfect language. "Because that's not who we are," she said simply. We defend ourselves, but we don't destroy others just because we can. If you're willing to talk, we're willing to listen. For the first time in 3,000 years, a supreme commander considered surrender. Not because he was forced to, but because he was faced with something he had never encountered before: mercy from a stronger enemy. The age of dominance was over. The question now was what would replace it. The answer would reshape the galaxy. 6 months after the battle, the galaxy was in chaos. The news of the defeat had spread faster than anyone expected. 50 species that had served the Empire for thousands of years suddenly learned that their gods could be beaten. Rebellions broke out on 100 worlds. Ancient grievances erupted into wars. Trade routes collapsed as former slaves fought former masters. Dr. Sarah stood in the main conference room aboard New Geneva Station, looking out at representatives from dozens of different species. The first Galactic Council meeting was not going well. "They demand the right to reclaim their stolen worlds," declared Ambassador, or his forearms waving angrily. "Those worlds have been colonies for 800 years, replied Trader. "The current population had nothing to do with ancient conquest." "The Mining Guild requests protection for our trade ships," added Captain Al nervously. "3 of our convoys have been attacked by revenge fleets." Doctor rubbed her temples. For every problem they solved, 2 more appeared. The collapse of the Empire had created a power vacuum that no one knew how to fill. "Perhaps," she said carefully, "we should hear from the representatives." The room fell silent as entered. The former commander looked different without his psychic glow. He seemed smaller, more fragile, like any other mortal being. Behind him walked Supreme Commander Az, who had agreed to surrender his remaining forces in exchange for fair treatment. "Honored delegates," began, his voice carrying none of its former arrogance. "I speak for the remnant. We wish to apologize for 3 of oppression." Angry voices erupted around the room. Several delegates demanded immediate punishment for war crimes. Others called for complete exile of all from the galaxy. Admiral Torres stood from his seat at the head table. His presence commanded respect, even from species that had never met humans before. "The question isn't punishment," he said firmly. "The question is what happens next. We can spend the next century fighting over the past, or we can work together to build something better." Ambassador Or's 4 eyes focused on the human admiral. "Easy words from the species that now holds the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Why should we trust that you won't simply become the new empire?" It was a fair question. Humanity's victory over the had established them as the dominant military force in this region of space. Their technology was advancing rapidly as they incorporated knowledge from dozens of species. Many worlds were already requesting human protection from the chaos. Doctor had dreaded this moment. She knew what Admiral Torres would say, and she wasn't sure the galaxy was ready to hear it. "Because," the Admiral replied slowly, "we don't want to rule anyone, we never have." The room erupted in disbelief. Trader laughed openly. "Every species wants to expand its influence. It is the natural order." "Not for us," Torres continued. "Human history is full of empires, and they all fall eventually. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We've learned that lesson the hard way." Captain Torres entered the conference room, carrying a data pad with the latest reports from Earth. The young captain had become something of a legend after her victory with the Prometheus, but she looked tired from months of peacekeeping missions. "The latest update from the outer systems," she reported to her father. "The Hegemony Rebellion is spreading to 6 more worlds. The crystalline entities are requesting mediation in their border dispute with the Iron Claw Federation, and they want us to escort another trade convoy through former space." Admiral Torres sighed, in Earth's response. "President Martinez says the same thing she said for 6 months. We'll help anyone who asks, but we won't impose our will on anyone." Az spoke for the first time since entering the room. "I do not understand. You possess the power to command this entire region of space. Why do you refuse to use it?" Doctor answered him, "Because power without consent isn't leadership, it's tyranny. Your empire proved that for 3,000 years. But without central authority, chaos will continue," the former Supreme Commander insisted. "Species will fight endlessly, trade will collapse, billions will suffer." "Then we'll have to find a different way," Torres replied. "One based on cooperation instead of domination." Over the next 3 hours, they hammered out the basic framework of what would become known as the Galactic Cooperation Accord. It wasn't a government or an empire. Instead, it was a voluntary alliance of species that agreed to certain basic principles. No conquest of other worlds, peaceful resolution of disputes, free trade between member species, and mutual defense against external threats. Humanity would provide military protection, but only when requested and only for defensive purposes. They would share their technology freely, but wouldn't force anyone to use it. Most importantly, they would have no more voting power in the Council than any other member species. "This will not work," said quietly. "Without fear to enforce order, some species will cheat. They will take advantage of others' goodwill." "Probably," Tors admitted. "But we'll deal with those problems when they happen. Better to fail trying to do the right thing than succeed by doing the wrong thing." The first vote was close: 27 species in favor, 19 opposed, and 8 abstaining. But it was enough to begin. 6 months later, Doctor stood on the observation deck of the New Geneva station, watching ships from 30 different species dock peacefully. The Galactic Council was meeting again, this time to welcome 5 new member species who had asked to join the alliance. "Penny for your thoughts?" Admiral Tors asked, joining her at the window. "Just thinking about how different things are," she replied. "A year ago we were preparing to be conquered. Now we're helping build a new civilization." "Any regrets?" Doctor considered the question. The past year had been exhausting. Humanity had become the reluctant peacekeepers of the galaxy, mediating disputes and protecting weaker species from those who still believed in conquest. It was thankless work that often put human lives at risk. "Ask me again in 100 years, she said finally. Across the station, former enemies worked side by side. Scientists collaborated with human researchers on new medical technologies. Engineers helped design space stations for species that had never achieved interstellar travel. Artists taught painting techniques to anyone interested in learning. It wasn't perfect. There were still conflicts, still species that refused to join the alliance, still threats from unexplored regions of space. But for the first time the galaxy was growing instead of stagnating under the rule of false gods. Entered the observation lounge, moving slowly with the aid of a walking stick. The loss of his psychic abilities had aged him rapidly, but he seemed more at peace than he had in centuries. "Dr. Admiral Tors," he greeted them politely. "I wanted to thank you again for allowing my people to join the council." "Everyone deserves a second chance," Tors replied, "even former gods." "I have been thinking about our first meeting," said. "When we demanded that you kneel before us, you asked for evidence of our divinity." "I remember," Doctor nodded. "I realize now that we never provided that evidence. We simply expected faith based on power. That was our mistake." He looked out at the diverse collection of ships docked at the station. "You humans have shown us something we never understood. True strength doesn't come from the ability to force others to obey. It comes from convincing them to stand with you willingly." Admiral Tors smiled. "We learned that lesson from studying our own history. Every tyrant eventually falls because they rule through fear instead of trust." "And now," asked, "now that you hold the power we once possessed?" Doctor answered for them both. "Now we try to prove that there's a better way, one where no one needs to kneel to anyone else." Outside the window, a new ship approached the station. It was sleek and unfamiliar, clearly from a species they had never encountered before. First contact protocols were already activating across the station. "Looks like we have visitors," Tors observed. Doctor smiled, already reaching for her scientific instruments. "Then we'd better go welcome them to the neighborhood. After all, that's what neighbors do." As they left the observation lounge, remained behind, watching the stars. For 3,000 years, they had spread across the galaxy, claiming to be gods and demanding worship. They had conquered 50 species and built the largest empire in known space. But these humans, these impossible humans, had done something they never imagined. They had given up the chance to build an empire in favor of building a community. And perhaps thought that made them something far greater than gods. It made them truly civilized. The galaxy would never be the same.